part two, and this is the show and tell portion. And Rick, we're gonna take turns showing some records. So what do you
Sure.
got up first?
Well, I think it's difficult to pick 10. What I did try to do was pick some things that were um, interesting things over the years that I've kind of, for my own choices and influenced a lot of what I like. Some weird, some good, some interesting, and whatever. So this thing is the John Barry meets Chad and Jeremy, which was released by Capitol Records back in the day. And the reason I have this selected this is one of the things that I'm a huge fan of is soundtrack music and various soundtrack music. A lot of that started with the early 60s. I was lucky to see things like Zulu, the movie Zulu at the theater, and Lawrence of Arabia. I know I'm really dating myself here. But also the Bond series. And I'm a huge John Barry fan, and I think a very influential guy. I mean, he worked with the group that produces the Bond movies for like 25 years or something. So he was took over, I think, on Doctor No and things like that. So, but just super talented guy, probably one of the most iconic, certainly soundtrack artists of his time, certainly.
So Rick, is that soundtrack specifically from well-known movies or?
This is actually a collection. It's interesting. It's one of these types of things that they did do in the 60s. And I got this later actually, but I just thought it was a fun record. John Barry meets Chad Barry, presenting England's leading composer, conductor, arranger of 007 fame, the talented duo consistently at the top of the charts. So, it's got one side one is all John Barry, side two is Chad and Jeremy. And two of the songs on the Chad and Jeremy side are with the John Barry Orchestra. But the John Barry side has like From Russia with Love, 007 theme. Yesterday's Gone with Chad and Jeremy actually on there. Lemon Tree, the real hit in our house. No, just kidding. But anyways, it's just sort of a fun record. But like I said, I'm a huge John Barry fan. I own a lot of the Bond movies on vinyl.
That's cool. And you're bringing two of we haven't really talked about movies, although you've referenced it, but I know you're a huge, huge movie buff. So that kind of brings
Yeah,
your two interests together, right? My turn.
go.
So I'm pretty sure you know this record, but Ultravox probably is better known as kind of a new romantic or I don't know, new wave band, right? When Midge Ure joined the band. But this is the first record. This is with John Fox. It was
Right.
kind of a bit of a Bowie wannabe, but this is a punk record. This has got a lot of edge to it, but it also has like electric violin on it. Um, I love this record. Saturday Night in the City of Dead. Every once in a while I have to play that really loud, and I just can't not jump up and down. These are the band members.
Right. I think Billy Curry and Chris Cross stayed with the band, right? And
You
Warren
know,
Can.
I don't know. I guess that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Three out of the five, I guess. Yeah, actually, you know what? That record was out when I was in college radio for a year. And I mean, I remember that record and like first Wire record, Big Flag, and the Stranglers, No More Heroes was out. And there was like a bunch of these all at one time.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
didn't
you
realize
know what? I'm
this.
a huge. Actually, I love John Fox's later stuff. His solo stuff is fantastic. He's got some great ambient type records.
I've been
Um,
meaning to explore that. I haven't really gone down
I
that
can
path.
recommend some fantastic albums from him. It's just he's a very very talented artist.
And this record, I hadn't even realized that fully as I was reading this. So it's produced by Eno,
Right?
and Steve Lillywhite, I think, was the assistant engineer on this record.
Yeah. Pre Police and pre the new wave boom. Right.
Yeah, the U2 and all that stuff. So your turn.
Alrighty. So I just picked this up again recently.
Mm.
Uh, Dr. John, the Night Tripper Gree. And this is in 68. I have a funny story with the record, actually. So, 68, I ended up, my folks, we had relatives. We lived in Burlington, an hour away from Toronto. And so, anyways, it was the summer, and I remember we went to go see these relatives of ours. I was like, you know, whatever, just before going to high school. And then, geez, why are they dragging me here? Anyways, we get there, and there was a cousin I had never met. And this guy was about, I think, 2 or 3 years older than I was. So we get there, and they said, "Oh, Rick, do you want to go downstairs with?" I forget his name, but to be honest, that's why I only met him once. So, anyways, we go downstairs, and they lived in Willowdale. But the long story short is, we get down there, and he's like, "Do you like Dr. John?" And I go, "No, I didn't know." And I'm still, like I said, finishing public school. We go downstairs into his bedroom in the basement. The whole ceiling is painted. I couldn't figure out what was on there. And then he put the record on and turned the lights off. And the ceiling was painted with fluorescent paint, so it looked like a night sky. And this guy liked his chemicals clearly.
Yeah, I was going to say, my kind of guy.
Yeah. So my first introduction to kind of outside of Hendrix and some other things to this sort of unusual psychedelic gumbo, New Orleans thing. I Walk on Gilded Splinters. Probably the most commercial track is Mama Roo. The other tracks on here, Croker Court Bullion, is just like wild and sounds amazing. I know there's an audiophile version of this out now, 2 record set on 45 RPM. But it's a classic album in my view. Still play it, and just enjoyable album.
That's awesome. I've got a few reggae records, and so there'll be a little narrative, but I'll split it up and do one by one by one in between yours.
Sure.
So I was somehow I was never a big Bob Marley fan, and I'm sure if I had seen Bob Marley live, I would have loved him. But it's interesting when you absorb an artist in a certain way, it can affect how you perceive them. So for me, I remember backpacking in Europe and hearing Bob Marley at every youth hostel and every lousy radio that was playing where all the hippies were hanging out. And I got so tired of hearing like songs that I liked, like No Woman, No Cry or Rastaman Vibrations, but just over and over and over again. But one day, I was at school at Queens in Kingston, and Peter Tosh was coming to town. I don't think I knew much about Peter Tosh. And he was like this album, Mystic Man, I think it was on this tour. And he came out and he was wearing like, I don't know, like tribal chieftain, Jamaican Rastafari stuff. He was all silhouetted and the smoke that was all around him. I mean, the ganja smoke was unbelievable. And the band was so tight and powerful. And I became in that moment just a massive Peter Tosh fan. Saw him about 3 or 4 times in his lifetime. And I loved his live stuff. He, of course, got signed to Rolling Stone Records, which here was, I guess, distributed by Warner Brothers, I think.
Yeah.
Virgin. Yeah. But we've talked about this before, but Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare were the rhythm section on this. And
Yeah.
the title track, Mystic Man, is great. The other ones, Recruiting Soldiers is a great song, Rumors of War, but this is a really nice record. I've got quite a collection of his stuff from Legalize It to this to others, but he was somebody that I just thought was really, really special. I don't know if you ever saw the documentary on him, Stepping Razor, as well, but
I haven't seen it. I'm familiar with a fair bit of his material as well. I mean, I own Legalize It, and I think I have a couple other ones of his as well. And I mean, I've always found that the influence of the Wailers, just in general, is pretty profound, right? There was a lot of talent in that, and sort of the offshoot and all that. But even, I think the Tosh stuff is great. I think the Bunny Wailer stuff on Island is fantastic.
okay, well, I have to show it then.
Well, okay, you're my man because I own that one. That is a
I
fantastic
love this
record.
record.
It's a fantastic record.
His vocals are so sweet and so beautiful. And God, and then this also has Sly and Robbie on it as well.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a great
yeah,
one,
yeah.
right?
I own that. It's a fantastic album.
Yeah. I might as well just knock it off real quick,
You're
but
3 for 3.
although I'm not a huge Whalers fan, I could never say anything bad about them, but this Babylon by Bus, this live record, I just think is great. And that's why I realized that if I'd had the opportunity to see Marley live, apparently he was just spectacular. This is it's got kind of a nice die cut kind of thing. So you got the sleeves
Yep.
that come out of the bus and everything. But this has got everything, Trench Down Rock and Rastaman Vibration. But the crowd interaction and the live production on this is really outstanding. And I highly recommend this for anybody
Great,
that,
great packaging, die cut, right? All the
yeah,
rest of it. Um,
loved it.
Again, amazing band, right? And I think, I mean, it's interesting. You're pulling all this stuff up. I just on the week last week I picked up um, Two Sevens Clash by Culture, and which I only ever owned digitally, so I got it on vinyl. Amazing record. I was almost going to put it in my bio, but it was like I'll do it maybe another time sometime. So
Do you know, when I've been reading a lot about the Grateful Dead, do you know that the Grateful Dead's records label, which was called Round Records, I think,
yeah,
or but they made a serious bid and almost signed Bob Marley.
I
Well,
could see that. I mean, yeah, I mean, my opinion, just arguably a lot of that mid to later. I mean, if you right, the obvious things, right? Scarlet Begonias, and I
yeah.
mean, there's a groove there, but I could see them being fans.
Oh, yeah. Estimated
That
Profit. They
makes a
really
lot of sense.
liked
Yeah,
reggae.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Your turn.
All right, well, I'm going to go back to the. This is a bit of tried and true here, but just fun again in spirit of records that were super influential. I know everybody's beat the living hell out of all the Led Zeppelin stuff, but very important record for me. This was again I mentioned earlier. I think I learned to play guitar and started playing bands, and this was a very foundational record. Coming out of Cream and all the rest of that British stuff, and then here's funny another funny story. I remember it's like this I think was out in 71 or 70 rather, or no, 69 rather. Sorry, excuse me, 69. And I remember the summer before, guy I was hanging around with, his sister, who was about 3 years older than us. Remember, we were talking to her. She's like, "Well, you guys wouldn't like Led Zeppelin, like at the time, right? Because they were just, like underground. Again, this sort of, like we just didn't have our ears weren't good enough to be able to experience it. But just this record, I just remember playing it and going, "Holy cow! Like what a difference from the first and second, and then the recording itself, performances. These the whole bit with using the theremin in the middle of a lot of love, and we can go on and on. But it's just a fantastic record and a real testament to Jimmy Page's talent and the talent in the band, and which the old, just proves good songs, good playing.
Oh, I remember that one when that came out as well, and I'm just doing the math, and I guess I was about 15 or something. So obviously a really key time to be hearing music and the power of that, like the way that they segued Heartbreaker into Living Loving Maid. I just remember it's just like it just goes from one to the other, and it was just beautiful. I remember just playing that over and over again.
I guess one other thing I will add is this that my very first large concert experience ever originally was seeing Led Zeppelin in 1971 in Toronto. And that was mind blowing. That was mind blowing. Like these
I
guys
bet.
played for 2.5 hours and just, it's crazy, but very talented, memorable, all the rest of it.
I've seen a lot of bands, and we talked about this not on camera, but I have very few that I feel like I missed. But I mean, I missed the ones that I really wanted to. But Led Zeppelin would have to be probably number one of the bands that I never did see.
Yeah. I had tickets for actually for that last tour that got canceled. The one before they did when the one Robert Plant's son passed away. I actually had
Yeah.
tickets to see them. I think it was in Buffalo, but they ended up canceling out.
Now, did you hear the story about how the mix or the mastering, Robert Ludwig, um, it was so hot that they actually remastered it again because apparently, like turntables were skipping?
No, I hadn't heard that stuff.
I don't know the full story, but there was something about the early pressings, and I think those are the Robert Ludwig ones, RL and the Dead Wax, but that it was so hot that in the old days when they didn't have things like, those kinds of dampening qualities to the
Yep,
turntable and the tables, it was causing the records to skip, so they had to go back and repress or remaster it.
I believe that. I believe that.
Well, staying in a kind of a reggae influence, not full on reggae, but there's a band that I had forgotten about for a long time because they had a massive hit that I just absolutely detested, which was Red Red Wine, and I think it was a Neil Diamond song, wasn't it? But UB40. But this record, when this first came out, this was 1980 or 81. Maggie Thatcher was, in power. Signing off refers to signing off the dole, right? So when you
Yep.
didn't have a job, you'd sign on, and this is putting out this record so they could sign off the dole. But this is two records, and one of them is 33 and a third, and one of them was 45. And the
Oh, cool.
45 had Madame Medusa on the 45 RPM, and
Mhm.
this was about Maggie Thatcher. 13 minutes, 14 minutes, like full on dub, saxophone, beautiful because it's a 45 RPM, beautiful sounding song as well. So, it was so cool to get this. And then the full 33, again, very political, and just a fantastic band. And it was really, they weren't on Two Tone, of course. They had their own label. It was Graduate Records, and or they were on another. I think they developed their own label, but they weren't on a major. But they were not a two-tone band like the Specials and Madness and Selector and all those guys. But they were a mixed race band who sang um, about racism. This was around the time when the National Front was starting to getting bigger and bigger, and there was kind of a fascistic undercurrent to some of the politics and the populace. And they spoke of that. And this is a really great record. So signing off UB40. I've been listening to it lately. It's been really fun.
I like the record after that that has "Don't Let It Pass You By" on it,
Yeah, that's really
which
good
is
too.
great, and
Yeah.
the other song in there, Mr. Sardonicus or Dr. Sardonicus or something. So
Yeah.
I'm still in the rock and roll thing here.
You
We're
go.
ready to,
Yeah, you go.
well, we talked about this one before, a few weeks back, I guess, but I'm a big fan of the Who, the early Who certainly, and love Tommy. Um, I know you're a big fan of Quadrophenia, and but I certainly got turned on to these guys more so than ever. I think when I saw the movie Woodstock and their performance in Woodstock, that just blew me away again. It's just what a great performance, and much of this is around the same time period afterwards. Clearly, I think it was recorded in 1970. This one is a British import. I have a few versions of this. It's fun because it has all the stuff, including the contract here for Woodstock, you know, shot from Woodstock. I think there's a replacement for ordering, replacing instruments invoice in here, and it's a bunch of other stuff. But great record. I think the energy, you can tell the band's passionate. They're on fire. Fantastic songs. The performances I've always considered that for a three-piece band with a vocalist, it's very tough to touch these guys. I
Hmm.
think in their peak.
Hmm.
The Keith Moon just had a way of filling in space and I mean that in a complimentary way. And Entwistle was a fantastic musician. Townsend, of course. Roger Daltrey, peak voice at that point. So great band.
It is pretty incredible as a three-piece, right? That's just
Oh,
the
listen,
sound
I
of
mean, the
them.
extended versions of this that have come out over the years, the different versions, but the extended version that has where they play pretty much, I think, the whole Tommy record is amazing to hear them, the three of them or the four of them do it.
Yeah,
It's just stunning. When they do Amazing Journey and things like that, Sparks, it's just wild,
yeah,
just wild.
yeah. And I always love the story about Townsend, who, if anybody ever came anywhere near him on stage, he would like kill them. It was like I think there was a fire marshal who was coming to say that they had to stop, and he was, I think, just attacked the guy. It was like,
I mean, famously, he clipped Abby Hoffman,
right.
the hippie, when he walked on stage at Woodstock. He hit him
Yeah,
with the guitar. This was before Keith Richards nailed some guy who ran on stage years later. But
yeah. Um, this is a band that a friend of mine turned me on to. I thought they were pretty good. Then I went to see them live, and I got it. I got it completely, and that's Guided by Voices. Don't
All
know if you
right.
know them well, but Robert Pollard and Guided by Voices. There are many versions of the band, but Pollard is the consistent one, and they were a hard drinking, hard rocking band, and they would do shows that were the set list would be like 35 songs, right? I mean, really, really short versions of things.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
he was a huge fan of The Who, and you can hear The Who influences on their stuff. But some of the stuff on here, like Hot Freaks, Tractor Rape Chain, just watching them play these things live, and they would just explode. And sometimes it'd be really messy, but it would all end, and then it would be brilliant, and then it'd be kind of messy and weird, and then to get more and more drunk, and some of the shows would really fall apart, and sometimes they would just be transcendent. I mean, I've seen, I guess, 4 or 5 shows, but always a really great, great show. This is kind of their seminal album for them. I think if you were to
Mhm.
get one, probably B1000 would be the one to get to have a sense of what they're about. And another one that came out a little bit later, I have just on CD that I love is Isolation Drills.
Yeah, I know of this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Great
But
cover.
just an awesome band. They you'd come on stage, they had a little neon sign and it just said the bar is open and like a cooler down there. And you'd look and see like how's he doing tonight? Like is he already hammered before he's even hit the stage, And
Yeah,
wouldn't necessarily mean it would be bad, but it would be very chaotic.
very early Townsend like, right?
Yes.
Uh, Again, picking seminal albums for me. Again, just from this is I don't know if you've probably seen this. This is the Spanish version of Sticky Fingers,
Yeah.
which we talked about it, which is an interesting record just from the perspective of the Spanish name of it is Pegajosos, which is Sticky Fingers in Spanish. And interesting because it was in Spain, which I think at the time when this was released, Franco was still in. And so Sister Morphine is not on the album, which ironically today Marianne Faithfull has passed away. The
Yeah.
song we've written about her.
R.I.P.
But this version of the album has the song Let It Rock on it, which is fun. Um, and Mick Taylor, we talked about earlier. I mean, I'm a huge Mick Taylor fan. Um, yeah, interesting. I remember the first time I ever heard this was we were talking earlier about Chum FM and Chum FM. Chum FM played the album in its entirety at one side and then did a commercial and played the other side before the album was released. And I remember hearing it on the radio about this big in the kitchen of my parents' home. It just totally floored me. I was just couldn't wait for it to come out. And when I was listening to it, by the time Can't You Hear Me Knocking came out, I was just like, this is a must own. I don't care if I have to sell something, I'll go buy this.
And it still is so great. I do these music appreciation night with friends, and invariably, Sticky Fingers, Can't You Hear Me Knocking, will get played. It's just something that just sounds as good today as it ever did, and
Yeah,
I never get tired of that song.
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm gonna show a couple because they're kind of linked. I'm cheating all over the place. I do this, Rick. This when this record came out, I think some people now are saying that they admit, it's kind of like one of their secrets is that they never really liked Patti Smith, and I get that because I don't think she's a beacon of commerciality, and that's what I really liked about her. But this androgynous photo of her that was taken by Robert Mapplethorpe, and if you ever read the book Just Kids about their days in New York, squatting
Mhm.
in buildings and just creating art, and just everything about them was about art and poetry and visual representation. But this record for me, you know, how could you imagine a record more exciting that begins with the words, Jesus died for somebody's sins, but not mine? And then going into Van Morrison or them's Gloria. Oh, it's just like, there's not much more punk than that, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that I remember when the record, the advanced stuff on the record, um, there was a lot of hype about it. And uh, I do recall as well, kind of the sales not really equaling certainly in Canada and where I was at the time, certainly not really being equal to that, which doesn't mean that it's not a good record or a great record. And the other thing I would say is that, and I think your commentary is very interesting because I really believe that oftentimes, there are albums that it takes a while for us to really appreciate why it's a great record. And it's a bit of work, but the work is worthwhile because it's satisfying, right? To be able to play it and really try to understand, okay, I know, it's almost like it's bad medicine. Why do I need to like the bad medicine? But inevitably, it ends up being good medicine and enjoyable, and you can get to really understand the passion of the artist. And
The other thing that was interesting, because this is all before, the two-tone and the reggae stuff where white boys or white girls are interested in ska and reggae music, is that Redondo Beach, and there's definitely a reggae undercurrent to some of the songs on here too, and it's very much filtered through like a very white band doing it. I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, but it's very much like their appreciation for that music in much the same way as maybe television also would kind of draw on that, but it wouldn't be reggae. It would just be some kind of like scratchy hooks that were very sort of reggae-ish.
yeah,
This was actually the one that I listened to the most when I was in high school. So I used to buy and sell bootleg records, and I'd get them from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Still Rare Records. And this was a Patti Smith one that I got that I played all the time.
yeah,
And we're going to have a real good time together. I think that was either Velvet Underground or early Lou Reed. And and there's a piece in here where I forget the name of the song, a piece of poetry that is just manic and weird, like it was sort of disturbing. I won't even go into describing it, but it was really weird.
yeah. I think I don't happen to agree that. I can understand people going, yeah, I don't like it as much as I used to, but that's their opinion, I guess. But I really think she's a super talented and as a poet, clearly, and a musician as well, and a lot of history, right? So,
Yeah. Your turn.
well, in the punk rock vein, again, in the records that were why they were important for me is this one was a big one. Um, New York Dolls, produced by Todd Rundgren. Like everybody else, I read about these guys playing at the Mercer Center in New York, and a lot of buzz, a lot of hype. Um, I still think it's to me they were came on the scene at the time the Stones were almost winding down, and pre-Sex Pistols, and who knows where the hell Iggy was at that point. I think Raw Power was out at probably just after this or something. But an excellent record. I think the songwriting's great. You almost feel like you're somewhere in Brooklyn at that point, which New York was a much different place than it is today, certainly. And songwriting's great. It sounds fantastic. Just a real true classic. To me, it kind of flicked a switch in my own brain around what I was listening to at that point. It just really, between that and Raw Power, it seemed to kind of change some stuff in my own view.
Everything changes. And I don't know, probably at that stage, Malcolm McLaren wasn't managing them, but there was that whole late career New York Dolls where Malcolm McLaren managed them. And then, of course, he was with Vivian, is it Westwood in that
Right.
Stop Sex, where the Sex Pistols started.
Yeah, I think that was after this. That was when he had him dressing all in red and covered in like hammer and sickle and all the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. One of my favorite artists, we talked about him during our last chat, but
Yeah,
this Get Happy, 20 songs, right? 10 aside. Nick Lowe promised us that there wasn't any crew cramming and that the sounded as good at the end as it did at the
yeah, that's right.
beginning. And Elvis was singing on that song, High Fidelity. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And then Riot Act that closes the first song side as well. My brother reminded me of what a tremendous song that is, and was kind of pointing in the direction of what his later career would be, which is, kind of really strong vocals and more complexity than, straight
Yeah,
ahead rock and roll stuff. And of course, I love him for all of those things, the straight ahead rock and roll and everything like that. But the soul influence on this record, like the stuff like Motel Matches and Black and White World, Temptation, Possession. secondary modern King Horse. Just some great keyboard work by Steve Naive on here. I
Yeah,
think he got a little bit more kind of foreground on this stuff. Everything seemed to be going very fast. All the songs are like 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Just love this record.
I always felt that that record is probably with the Attracts is probably one of the most misunderstood albums from them in a way. You know, I think after the first two, those first
Yeah.
two were the powerhouse records, and this one there was a lot of music to digest. If I recall, it came out very quickly after the second, right? So,
Yes, I think so.
all right, all right. Well, we'll take one. This one I've got is Shriekback, the Care
Oh,
album.
nice.
Um, and this is out from released in 1983 with Barry Andrews, ex of XTC, who I love, and the League of Robert Fripp's League of Gentlemen, as well as Barry Allen from Gang of Four. I would argue a very seminal 80s record at the kind of the height of the new wave and all the rest of that stuff. But this was a very interesting record in that it was, I would say, partially cerebral and partially dance worthy. And Kirsty MacColl, I think, is actually even on this record, and the
Wow.
song all lined up. But a great record. I think very representative of what they were about when these guys went on to. I mean, they still have records coming out. They had record. I think their last one, excuse me, was that in 2023 or something like that.
Cool.
And fantastic. Or My Spine is the bass line. Can't beat it.
I know of Shriekback, but I don't know any of their music, so it's something I should
Oh,
listen to.
this is a great one. This is a great one, in my view, just to get to understand them. I mean, they did music in the movie, Michael Mann movie Manhunter as well, right? So,
Nice. Cool. I'm going to make this my last one, and then you got one more. We've talked before about Kate Bush, and I can't remember your story, but I think you actually did you not go to the UK or something and part of a PR thing with Kate Bush, or you got to see Kate Bush?
I actually met her. I hung out with her for like 2 hours. Um,
That's every boy's
briefly.
dream.
Yeah, well, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I got to hang out with her in Toronto. Um, this was, I'm just trying to think here now. Yeah, this was in Toronto at the King Edward Hotel. And I showed up there, and there was another couple there. And when you walked into the King Edward, there was a mezzanine above where the lobby was, and they had the mezzanine all closed off. I thought there was going to be like 1,000 people there. I got there, and there was nobody except this other couple who I came in with. And the three of us were there with her um, for like 2 hours. I don't know what happened. I don't know where everybody else was. I mean, as you know, famously, she never flew anywhere.
No.
I think she came over in the Queen Elizabeth or something at that time. But at the time, I was smoking cigarettes, and I always joke about it because I have the invitation. I kept the invitation. I asked her to autograph it for me, which she did. I've always been a huge fan, and I always joke about it because she was like bumming cigarettes off me all night. And I still remember she had looked fantastic too. Just obviously super talented and very nice person, down to earth, beautiful, beautiful woman. And I remember she had a lily in her hair, and had her hair all kind of up with this lily and or whatever. But just super nice person, just a pleasure to meet. So often you meet people and artists, and I mean, it's got to be tough, right? But here you got to shake this guy's hand and or another 30 people and act like you're interested. And
Yeah.
you run some record store somewhere, but she was just, one of those people that you meet, and it was like you could tell she was engaged, she was interested, would ask questions. How long have you lived here? What do you do? Where do you work? All this business, and
That's
just what
awesome.
are you listening to? Great person.
Well, your story is much better than I could say, but I was just thinking Kate Bush late career. Um, I really loved her stuff all the way up, all of them, all the way up to Sensual World. Still love Sensual World. And then the Red Shoes one kind of I wasn't so interested in. I kind of didn't pay attention to some of her releases, and she's had some subsequently. So Ariel came out, I don't know, 2018. No, I thought that, yeah, this came out earlier than 2018, but I guess this was released on vinyl in 2018, but in the 2000s. But, beautiful. Everything about what she does is beautifully packaged. There's a nice book in there with all the lyrics, just it's such a pleasure to sit down and just kind of digest her music.
Yeah, I own it as well. It's a great album.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's just
Yeah,
beautifully, it's just got a great, everything is kind of like a little bit different. It all flows together. It's a whole story about the artist and everything. I can't say that I can really articulate it, but there's just a really beautiful kind of story arc through the whole thing. And of course, the music is what is really transcendent. But I love this record. I really
yeah,
enjoy it. Still play it a lot. So
yeah. She's a
over,
super talent in my view,
over to you
and
for your one last one.
has never put out a bad album. So you're
No,
making it tough here, buddy. But I'm gonna go with this one here, Massive Attack, Heligoland.
I don't know that
Um,
Massive Attack album.
yeah, 2010, and
Okay.
great album in my view. I've always been I always loved the trip hop stuff, um, by and large, and these guys were certainly. I think I remember somebody dropping off a copy of Blue Notes. I think, or Blue Lines rather. Excuse me. Um, when it first came out in Canada, and I was hooked after that. And but a fantastic record. I just think the songwriting is great. Amazing use of sound as an instrument. You know, the some fantastic people on the record. I mean, Damien Albarn is on here. Hope Sandoval from Mazzy Star. And, somebody, I forget the guy's name from TV on the radio, but very interesting album. I don't think they've actually ever put out a bad album. Uh, I've never actually seen these guys. Would be on my wish list. Somebody I would love to see at some point.
I had tickets to see them at the LA Palladium a few years ago, and they canceled the tour. Mezzanine.
Oh, Mezzanine, right? Okay, one that's got the Beatle on it.
But it was going to be that album. They were going to play that album at the LA Palladium, and I was already going there for another show, but I was going to see that, and I was so
Yeah, I
disappointed.
just love these guys. These are, you know what? They're just one of those bands for me that I can play anytime, anywhere. I always wonder why is it they haven't done more soundtracks? Because I just think for films, because their music just works that way, And
Hmm.
yeah, great band.
Well, thanks, Rick. This was really fun. To be continued, and we could obviously show albums for hours and hours and hours. So let's spread it out over time.
Yeah, well, it
All
was a
right.
pleasure, and thanks so much. It's great to
Thank
see
you.
you as usual, and talk to you soon.
We'll catch up in the real world momentarily.
Yep, thanks for inviting me.
Thank
Take
you.
care, buddy.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.